Well, Kramnik has retired from chess but decides to come back for the World Blitz 2019 and the London system on the board. Kramnik, a great positional exponent, plays right in the center, takes on d4, ed4 and brings his queen to b6, attacking the b2 pawn. Bishop to f5. Look at the speed with which Vladimir is playing. He has now put a pressure on the c2 pawn and knight b4 is a big threat. Magnus can play c3 here and stop that move, but he takes his time and he plays bishop e2. Oh my god, now knight b4 is a big move. e6, Kramnik misses it. He could have played knight b4 and then there was no way to defend c2 well. In that position, Carlsen would have been in big trouble, but now he just castles and all is well. All is back to normal, pushes his pawn to a4. Trying to gain more space on the queen side. If this pawn is not stopped, it can go a5, a6. Kramnik thinking here what to do, because if he pushes his own pawn to a5, it weakens the b5 square. And that's the reason why he doesn't want to be pushing his a5 pawn. He pushes it only to a6. Magnus goes one step forward and the queen comes back to d8. The knight jumps to e5. Carlsen wants to exchange off those knights. Rook to c8 and c3. Finally, black castles and now his king is safe. If you look at this position, black is doing pretty well. There is no problems. All his pieces are playing well. His bishop on f5 is active and now he plonks his knight on e4 on an active square. Bishop to d3. Now Carlsen is looking at some very tricky little moves like f3 in the position. Kramnik adjusts himself in the chair. He knows that now is the time to think carefully. He takes on e5 and bishop takes e5, instantly played by Magnus. Bishop to g6, so that now the bishop is firmly supported by two of his pawns. Until now, black has played well. He has also managed his clock very well. If you look at the times, both players have 2 minutes 20 seconds on the clock. Carlsen plays bishop f4, just moving his bishop one step back, and could be that f3 is coming up. Now knight to d6, and this is the moment where Magnus begins to show his class. It seems he takes on g6, doubles the pawns, and now this is just entirely based on his feel. Magnus Carlsen is thinking whether he should take on d6 or not. Usually a bishop is a superior piece than a knight, but in this very case, Carlsen realizes that his knight would be better than the bishop. He puts his pawn on g3. His idea is to play h4, king g2, h5 and begin playing on the king side. But meanwhile, Kramnik realizes this danger and plays b5. He wants to start playing on the queen side. The b3 knight is somewhat under pressure, and also the b2 pawn. That's why Magnus played rook e2 and supported the b2 pawn. Now rook to b8. The knight comes back. It's a beautiful route for the knight to go from d3 to e5. Now Kramnik plays his queen to b5 and h4. Magnus is looking at king g2 and h5 at the right moment. Rook fc8, and look at this move, rook d2, opening the queen's path to h5 so that h5, h4, h5 pawn push can be made. Kramnik now goes rook a8. He wants to push his a pawn, but before that, Magnus's queen has already entered on Kramnik's king side. g6 has been played, and now the queen. Magnus thinks for a bit. Where should he move the queen? He moves it to h6, king g2 and rook h1 on the cards. Vladimir assesses whether he should deal with that threat. No, a4 is played, now threatening rook h1. Bishop comes back, moving the queen out, and queen comes back to f4. You can see how Magnus is 30 seconds ahead on time now, but Kramnik has managed his time very well. He still has 1 minute 27 seconds. And the position is still quite complicated. Although the black king is slightly under pressure with the queen on f4, knight jumping to e5 and the rook coming to h1. Black has his own counterplay against the b2 pawn and a4, a3 threatened. But who is going to come up ahead in this position? Bishop to g7, and Carlsen plays his knight to e5, threatening the f7 pawn. If you take the knight, then after queen e5, the dark squares are tremendously weak. So that's the reason why you cannot pick up that knight. You have to defend your pawn on f7, and Vladimir comes back to e8, defends the f7 pawn. This is the moment where Carlsen has to think what to do next. He has things going his way, but he needs one more piece into the attack. How should he be bringing that in? Also, the move queen e8 prepares f6 to push the knight so that the g6 pawn is defended. Rook to d3. He gives up the pressure on the b2 pawn, and he is bringing his knight. Rook to f3. The knight comes to g4, attacking the f6 pawn. Queen f8, and now rook to f3. He's putting more pressure on f6. Magnus Carlsen is turning on the screws from absolutely nowhere. He's created a scintillating attack against the black king. a3 is pushed, because if knight takes f6, then the queens get exchanged. So would Carlsen go for that, or will he take on a3? First he takes on a3, and now f5 is played, attacking the knight. But instead of moving the knight, he moves the queen. Now the knight cannot be taken as the queen is hanging on f8. That's the reason why now Kramnik moves his king away. Wow. And rook joins in, abandoning the queen side. Take all the pawns you want. I'm going after your king, says Magnus Carlsen here. Kramnik down to 30 seconds. He has to figure a way out. He takes on a3, and Carlsen now moves his rook to h7. 4 pieces in the attack. 2 rooks, knight and a queen. This seems like absolutely crushing attack. Well, how do you defend that? Knight e5 is threatened. Knight h6 is threatened. So many threats in the position. Kramnik takes the pawn on c3, but not with great confidence. Knight h6 and g6 is taken. Now the g7 bishop was hanging, and Kramnik resigns the game.